Professor Adele Jinadu is a political scientist and former member of Nigeria's National Electoral Commission. He joins me now to help discuss, from the INEC perspective, the Electoral Act Amendment as it relates to real-time electronic transmission of votes. Prof, thank you very much for being here with us. I think at the heart of this is most probably a trust deficit with the people. This Senate seeming U-turn, which doesn't satisfy the people still. What's your thought as to their decision?
Thank you for inviting me, and good evening. I think electoral reform, particularly reform of the legal framework for elections, is very, very important and useful, particularly in bringing all kinds of opinions to bear on the process of the review of the electoral law. So I think it's important that we realize that there will be disagreements. Of course, we cannot have unanimity, but once the National Assembly takes a decision and takes a position, then it becomes law. So I think it's important.
Okay, I think we lost the professor a bit, but I mean, law is made for the people, by the people. So if the people are saying they're not quite happy, okay, Prof, I think we have you back. Go ahead, please.
No, I don't want to go into law by the people, because you can ask the question, who are the people? But the point I'm making is that it is an important process to have the law, to have the electoral law reviewed, because we have elections every 4 years. But I think since 1999, aspects of the electoral process that have not been addressed in the electoral review processes since 1999. Issue of corruption, for example, the financing. But what is important, the current exercise, trying to check a reputation of the powers of results electronically. So I think it's important to emphasize that point.
Okay.
But looking at what we have now, there are a number of gaps. That one of those gaps is that we still have ambiguity in the law. We need to clarify certain aspects. Particularly, it seems to me there's a confusion between transmission, electronic transmission of results, and collation of results. These are two different issues. And it seems to me that the electoral amendment process, particularly the bill that we have before the National Assembly now, and at the Senate level and at the House of Reps level, still leaves a lot of gaps in terms of what do you mean by the transmission, even if you agree it has to be transmitted, and how does that relate to the question of collation? The second gap, I think, is that we need also to see what is the relationship between INEC's power to make regulations regarding the conduct of elections and how that relates to statutory provisions in the electoral law or in the Constitution. So I think that is the second important issue that I think that we should be taken into account. Okay. The third one is, of course, the whole need to audit elections. We've not been doing audit of elections. Elections take place, there are problems, and then we just start the whole process of another round of electoral law review without actually auditing to find out what actually went wrong with the last elections and what do we need to do about them.
Okay, I think you make an important point with the auditing of elections. So we really lack in that area. And just to add that as a question, how do you think we should go about doing the audit post-elections? But before you answer that, while the Senate approved the electronic transmission of vote, it says no real-time transmission. Is this really an impossible task for INEC? Real-time transmission of results from your experience?
No, it depends. It depends on what you mean by real time. Real time is again, part of that is you cannot clear all ambiguities. So what does real time mean? Immediately, less than 1 hour, less than 2 hours. So that will raise confusion about it. And I think for this reason, the Senate removed the old notion of real time from their own version of the amendment 2022 Election Amendment Bill.
Okay, there's part of the question you didn't take on. How would we go about post-election review so we don't continue to repeat the same mistake? While you're answering that, let me add another one to it. The question of if there was real consultation with INEC, this decision that the Senate has made, do you think INEC was properly consulted as to their capacity, what they can achieve before this decision was made?
Well, the way these things happen with relation to electoral, for example, is that there will be consultations between various stakeholders, and INEC definitely is one of the stakeholders. So they will make input into the draft of the bill. It will be sent to them. They will make commentary on it, but the final decision lies with the National Assembly as the lawmaking, as having the lawmaking power to review the electoral law and have it assented to after it has been passed in the two houses of the National Assembly. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. INEC has an important role to play, and I think they should make their position clear on the controversy now. But there is no doubt that the ultimate decision is with the National Assembly. And they've made their consultations. We may have questions about the consultation process. Who did they consult with? Whom did they listen to? Did they get written submissions and so on and so forth? And I think part of that whole process that I'm talking in terms of the gap is that process should also have involved an audit of what happened in 2023 to inform this current exercise. And I don't think that has been done. That review has not been done by the National Assembly. And I don't remember it's having been done since the first review after the 1999 election. So audit of the elections were very, very, and that is where INEC, it will be kind of a public hearing. INEC will also appear, all kinds of stakeholders will appear, to say this is what is wrong with that kind of elections. And matters arising from those elections will now be taken into consideration in drafting the review of the electoral law.
Yeah, Prof, these protests that we've seen in the past days that seem to have instigated an emergency session at the Senate only to come out with a result that the people are still dissatisfied with. Do you think these protests will amount to any real change, considering what we just saw? And should there be any reconsideration by Senate from your experience, or the law as they have passed is okay with you?
The law has not been passed. It is still going to harmonize the two versions, the Senate and the House of Reps versions. And I think in that whole process, some of these reactions will be taken into consideration. But the point one is also making is that that process of harmonization should be tempered to the extent to which it is important to revisit the problems of the 2023 elections. The country almost went to flame over those elections. And maybe INEC has done an internal review, but the National Assembly ought to do an internal review of a public hearing, what went wrong with the 2023 elections. They have not done that. I know they've gone on they have had zonal meetings on the process of reviewing the 2022 Electoral Act, but they have not done a systematic database review of what went wrong with the 2023 elections. I think we need something like that. And I think moving forward, we also should routinize post-election audit. Every election cycle, there must be a post-election. I know INEC does that internally, but the National Assembly must also do that. I mean, you spend a whole 4 years, every electoral cycle, you spend almost 4 years reviewing the electoral law without doing an audit of the previous elections.
Thank you very much, Prof, for speaking with us and for that quick catch that I missed. Thank you again.